The handover of living Israeli hostages has begun in Gaza, with nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees in Israel being freed as part of the first phase of the U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal. The National Assembly launched its first audit of the Lee Jae-myung administration on Monday. Rival parties clashed over the appearance of the Supreme Court's Chief Justice and tariff negotiations with the U.S. on the first day of the over 3-week-long audit. Also Monday, President Lee Jae-myung once again stressed the importance of expanding the power of a culture into new economic growth engines and called on the need for financial reform of K-culture. We begin in the Middle East, where Israeli hostages have been released in exchange for thousands of Palestinian prisoners as part of the first phase of a new ceasefire agreement. We have our Park Kwon-woo on the line to tell us more. Kwon-woo, how has the hostage release been taking place?
Yes, Jami. So 7 of the 20 living Israeli hostages were released at around 8 a.m. local time on Monday, which is around 2 p.m. Korea time. They were first given to the International Committee of the Red Cross and then to the Israel Defense Forces. The remaining hostages, along with more than 20 bodies of those deceased, are also set to be released later today. In exchange, 250 Palestinian prisoners and more than 1,700 Gaza detainees will be freed after all of the Israeli hostages are released. But high-profile figures, including senior Hamas commanders, were reportedly excluded from the list. The released Israeli hostages have been transported to the Reim military base in southern Israel for initial checkups and to reunite with their families who have been waiting over 2 years for this moment.
I'm so excited. I'm full of happiness, and it's hard to imagine how I feel this moment. Thank you for everyone, all the people here in Israel and around the world that fight with us for this moment.
The hostages will be taken to hospitals for medical checkups afterwards, and Israeli Air Force helicopters are also on standby to airlift those in need of urgent medical care. Monday's hostage release marks the first phase of the truce deal between Israel and Hamas, a deal brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump along with Arab and Turkish representatives that began last Friday. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it's not over yet.
The battle is not over. There are still very serious security challenges ahead. Some of our enemies are trying to recover so they can attack us again.
So, Kwon-woo, what is actually left for a permanent peace deal to be reached? We know U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived in Israel.
Yes, so Trump will be heading to Egypt for a summit hosted with his Egyptian counterpart to discuss U.S. proposed deals and post-war plans on Monday, as there are more things to discuss, including the disarmament of Hamas. The event will be attended by more than 20 world leaders, including British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, although representatives from Israel and Hamas will not participate. Meanwhile, Trump also stopped by Israel around an hour ago, as you mentioned before, to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and address the country's parliament. On his way to Israel, Trump said the war has ended and the ceasefire will hold.
I think people are tired of it. It's been centuries, okay? Not just recent, it's been centuries. I think people are tired of it. Yeah, the ceasefire is going to hold.
And alongside, Trump will be awarded the Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor, Israel's highest civilian honor, according to the Israeli Presidential Office, to recognize his efforts in securing the release of the 48 hostages held by Hamas. And that's all I have for you now. Back to you, Dami.
All right, Kwon-woo, thank you for that coverage. Now, in the meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump seems to be extending an olive branch to China's Xi Jinping after he threatened to impose higher tariffs on Beijing. Trump said neither he nor Xi Jinping wants their countries to face a recession. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Amid rising concerns that the United States and China could reignite a trade war through ultra-high tariffs and export controls, U.S. President Donald Trump struck a notably softer tone on Sunday. According to Trump, the U.S. does not seek to harm China, but to help it. His remarks came just 2 days after he announced a 100% tariff in response to China's rare earth export controls, and hinted at boycotting a face-to-face meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the upcoming APEC summit. Trump also took to Truth Social to note that neither he nor Chinese President Xi Jinping wants a recession. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance spoke to Fox News on Sunday and expressed hope that Beijing will choose a rational path, stressing that the U.S. president holds far more cards than China. Vance also said he had spoken with Trump over the weekend, noting Trump's appreciation for the relationship with China, but emphasizing the significant leverage Washington holds. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer criticized China's rare earth export controls, revealing that Washington was not notified in advance, despite Beijing's claims. Greer said that Washington learned through public sources and immediately contacted China, but Beijing deferred taking the call. Greer stressed that power plays by China will not be tolerated. Still, Greer left the door open for dialogue, noting that the U.S. has already made working-level contact with China and will wait to see if Beijing is interested in high-level talks to ease tensions. The latest developments suggest Washington is preparing for both pressure and diplomacy, with the next steps likely hinging on China's response ahead of the APEC summit later this month. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, here in South Korea, attention now turns to the National Assembly, where the first audit under the Lee Jae-myung administration began today. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The new administration's first National Assembly audit opened Monday, setting the stage for government-wide accountability checks through to November. But the spotlight today was squarely on the judiciary and the political storm surrounding Chief Justice Choi that stems from a controversial Supreme Court ruling, which found President Lee guilty of making false claims during his 2022 presidential campaign. Appearing before the Legislation and Judiciary Committee, Cho said summoning judges to testify over their rulings threatens the constitutional independence of the courts.
If judges are made to testify about their rulings simply because they presided over a certain case, it could discourage them from making judgments based on the Constitution, the law, and their conscience, and even lead to decisions swayed by outside pressures.
He added that his attendance followed long-standing custom to deliver opening and closing remarks. But lawmakers were unsatisfied. Ruling Democratic Party leader Chung Chung-rae urged the Chief Justice to approach the audit with utmost sincerity and said the audit must uncover alleged interference in President Lee's election law case. Across the aisle, main opposition People Power Party leader Chang Dong-hyuk accused the DP of using the audit for political attacks, vowing instead to expose what he called abuses of political, administrative and judicial power. Meanwhile, economic ministries were also under scrutiny. Trade Minister Kim Jong-kwon warns that Korea's heavy export dependence on specific countries makes it vulnerable to shocks and pledged to diversify export markets and strengthen cooperation with the US, China and Japan. Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chol, for his part, said Seoul must swiftly conclude tariff talks with Washington, confirming he is arranging a meeting with US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this week. As the audit season begins, both ruling and opposition blocs appear determined to use it to press their narratives, one emphasizing reform, the other restraint, with the judiciary caught in the middle of Korea's deepening political divide. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung today presided over a meeting with his aides, getting back to work after the Chuseok holiday. He urged for the speeding up of fiscal and regulatory reforms to boost K-culture, calling it the core of the strength of a nation. Our President's Office correspondent Yoon Jung-min has more.
Expanding the power of culture into new economic growth engines. That's what topped the agenda as President Lee Jae-myung presided over a weekly meeting with his senior aides upon returning to work after a long Chuseok holiday.
새로운 21세기 국제사회에서는 문화가 국가의 국격, 경쟁력, 국력의 핵심이라고 생각합니다.
Noting the growing presence of K-culture on the world stage, the president called for the need to create a comprehensive set of measures that can encompass the cultural ecosystem, adding that the notion of culture goes beyond music and art to dramas, food and beauty industries, and even democracy.
문화 콘텐츠 기반 확충에 필요한 재정이나 또 세제, 규제 측면에서 혁신의 속도를 내야 되겠습니다. 그리고 연계 산업과의 시너지 효과를 높일 수단을 다양하게 강구해 봐야 되겠습니다.
The focus was also on ways to strengthen the social safety net for artists, as called upon by President Lee. Monday's discussions were a reflection of Lee's policy priorities on taking care of people's livelihoods in the face of a tug-of-war trade talks with the U.S., as well as intensifying global uncertainties over the fresh rivalry between the U.S. and China.
대내외 여건이 어렵긴 하지만 바람이 거셀수록 또 연이 높이 나는 원리도 생각해 봐야 되겠습니다. 지금 우리가 처한 위기를 국민의 삶을 개선하는 새로운 기회로 만들 수 있도록 주권자 제1의 공복으로서 국가 역량을 단단하게 모아 나가야 되겠습니다.
윤정민, Arirang News.
South Korean police are stepping up efforts to combat the string of crimes targeting Korean nationals in Cambodia, following the shocking death of a Korean college student who was allegedly tortured to death. Pyongyang reports.
A Korean university student surnamed Park was found dead near Bokor Mountain in Cambodia's Gangwon-do Province in early August, in what authorities believe was a case of torture and murder. Another Korean national who was held captive at the same site said Park had been beaten so severely he couldn't walk or breathe. His death certificate listed extreme pain caused by torture as the cause of death. The case has sparked public outrage in South Korea, leading to growing calls for tighter protection for citizens overseas and stronger crackdowns on transnational crime groups. In response, the Korean National Police Agency announced Sunday it will hold a bilateral meeting with Cambodian police in Seoul on October 23rd to establish a Korean desk, allowing Korean officers to work directly with local law enforcement. The system is expected to improve coordination in cases involving organized multinational crime groups. Police also plan to strengthen cooperation through a multinational task force within the year, targeting cross-border organized crime. Additionally, President Lee Jae-myung has instructed the Foreign Ministry to make every effort to protect South Korean citizens in response to the recent string of crimes in Cambodia. Meanwhile, new allegations have emerged about the suspects behind Park's murder. Yonhap News Agency reports that a Chinese national identified as Lee, one of the main suspects, is also suspected of involvement in the 2023 Gangnam drug-laced beverage case that targeted students in Seoul. A Korean civic group following the Cambodia case claimed Lee had a prior drug record and served as a distributor in that earlier case. The investigation is ongoing, with South Korean and Cambodian authorities working to track down the remaining suspect and broaden joint efforts against transnational criminal networks. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
After celebrations marking the 80th founding anniversary of the Workers' Party, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed gratitude for those who helped organize the events and visited Kumsusan Palace of the Sun. Our Kim Bo-kyung has the details.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, the family mausoleum, to solidify internal unity. According to the regime's Korean Central News Agency on Monday, Kim visited the site on the previous day to dedicate the glory of having celebrated the 80th founding anniversary of the Workers' Party of Korea in such a grand manner. Wearing a black leather jacket, he was quoted to have said the regime's high prestige it enjoys today cannot be thought separately from the great leader and general. The visit comes after Kim watched a mass gymnasium and art performance with people who helped to organize recent celebrations, including a military parade on October 10th. While touting the celebrations as a truly splendid grand political and cultural festival, he underlined that thanks to participants playing their role perfectly, the events could show off the regime's cultural side and its mightiness. One expert says the party's founding anniversary celebrations must have been a proud moment for the regime, as high-ranking foreign dignitaries, such as Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Russia's deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, and Vietnamese leader Do Lam, were present.
Not only Kim Jong-un, but also North Korea's internal elites and citizens have never before experienced such an elevated status of the regime. This is the first time they have successfully hosted such a large-scale event with foreign guests from not only China, Russia, but also ASEAN countries.
At the military parade on Friday night, the regime showcased the newly developed Hwasong-20 intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time as well, along with other new weapons.
The Hwasong-20 mainly aimed to show off solid fuel technology and multiple warhead capability, sending a clear message to the U.S. By proving it can strike the U.S. mainland, North Korea boosted both its deterrence and bargaining power.
Dubbed the most powerful nuclear strategic weapons system by KCNA, Kim, in his speech during the parade, reportedly said the regime's army should continue to grow into an invincible entity. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korean power plant equipment manufacturer Doosan Enerbility has secured its first gas turbine export contract, under which it will deliver two 380-megawatt turbines to an undisclosed major U.S. tech firm by the end of next year. This marks the first time the company has struck a deal to export its gas turbines overseas. In 2019, Doosan Enerbility became the fifth company in the world to secure gas turbine technology through a joint domestic industry academic cooperation. Now, according to the company, the surge in power demand from data centers, driven by the rise of AI use, was behind the overseas order. South Korea's Jeollabuk-do Province has been working to host the 2036 Summer Olympics. As part of its efforts to secure the bid, a delegation from the province visited Zimbabwe, the home country of the President of the IOC. Our Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
Bulawayo is the second city of Zimbabwe, a landlocked country on the African continent. Bulawayo was the first destination for the country's first K-Festival, where visitors could make their own traditional Korean items, such as hats and fans.
Oh, I really love this event. As a person who loves Korean culture.
Just like the Experience Zone, the concert hall also proved popular. The crowd was excited to hear the 2012 hit Gangnam Style, and went wild when the trending hit K-pop Demon Hunters OST came on. Even though the traditional performances like Pansuri and Samulnori might have been unfamiliar, the African audience responded with great enthusiasm.
Beautiful, exciting, we really enjoyed it, and we wish that this performance can continue as during the festival in Bulawayo here in Zimbabwe again. Thank you. Kamsahamnida.
Korea Festival 2025 continued the next day in Harare, the capital and largest city of Zimbabwe. This time, the venue was the Korean ambassador's residence, and the main guests were diplomats from various countries, as well as influential figures from Zimbabwe's political, social, and sports sectors.
Appreciate and have seen how great the traditional sound of South Korea through its arts, through its music, and through its dance. It has been an amazing.
Jeollabuk-do Province, which has announced its bid to host the 2036 Summer Olympics, aims to make the Olympics a cultural event. The delegation from Jeollabuk-do Province made the long journey all the way to Africa, since Zimbabwe is the homeland of the newly elected president of the International Olympic Committee, Kirsty Coventry. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In France, newly reappointed Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has announced a new government, his second such in a week, as he tries to steady the country after days of political chaos and rebuild confidence in France's economy. The 39-year-old centrist and ally of President Emmanuel Macron presented the cabinet on Sunday, a mix of Macron's loyalists, moderate conservatives, and figures from outside politics. Lecornu was reappointed on Friday after resigning earlier in the week, after his first government collapsed within hours of its formation. The new cabinet faces a fractured parliament where Macron's centrist bloc has lost its majority. The right-wing National Rally is demanding new elections, while the left-wing France Unveils wants the president to resign. Economists say Lecornu's first test will be delivering a credible 2026 budget to ease market jitters as France's debt climbs above 110% of GDP. Analysts warn that without stability, investor confidence could erode further across Europe. In the United States, police in South Carolina are searching for a gunman who killed 4 people and injured at least 20 others after opening fire at a crowded bar on St. Helena Island, about 40 kilometers south of Charleston. The shooting happened around 2 a.m. Sunday at a local bar. Witnesses say a fight broke out before the subject started firing indiscriminately. According to the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, several victims remain in critical condition. U.S. Representative Nancy Mace took to social media to say she was, quote, completely heartbroken by the shooting. Gun control advocates say it underscores America's unrelenting gun violence crisis, with more than 500 mass shootings recorded this year. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has warned that more layoffs are coming if the government shutdown continues, saying, quote, the longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts will be. The shutdown, now in its 3rd week, has left hundreds of thousands without pay and forced thousands of federal layoffs, including at the CDC. Officials later reinstated about 700 workers after they said some notices were sent in error. Meanwhile, the standoff began on October 1st over health insurance subsidies in the budget. Oscar-winning actress Diane Keaton has died aged 79. According to People magazine, the star of Annie Hall, the movie for which she won the Oscar for Best Actress in 1978, died in California on Sunday. A spokesperson for her family said there were no further details, but asked for privacy. Keaton also starred in a range of Hollywood classics in a career spanning 5 decades, from The Godfather to Something's Gotta Give. Known for her trademark hats, men's suits, and witty dialogue delivery, she brought both warmth and quirk to the screen. Tributes are pouring in from across Hollywood, including from former co-star Goldie Hawn, who took to social media to say, quote, you've left us with a trail of fairy dust filled with particles of light and memories beyond imagination. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
It has been raining in most parts of the country today. This rain will continue until tomorrow. As much as 120 millimeters of heavy rain will be concentrated in the eastern parts of Gangwon-do Province, and more than 80 millimeters will be concentrated on the east coast and mountainous areas in the northern parts of Gyeongsang-mukdo Province. Along the east coast, there will be sudden strong winds of around 15 meters per second. In addition, the waves will be high and rough on the East Sea. Please pay attention to safety reports. Tomorrow morning's Seoul will start off at 15 degrees, Daejeon and Gyeongju at 18 degrees. Daily highs will up to 20 degrees in Seoul, 26 degrees in Jeju. There will be frequent rainy days across the country throughout this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have at this hour. We will be back later at 8 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.